Iago Wilius Leo ni Yugiats. My name is Amanda Gerondale. My Oneida name is She Has a Good Heart. I grew up in Luxembourg, Wisconsin. I transferred to Oneida my senior year, which is how I became involved with the res. I finished high school with Oneida my senior year and started working at the casino where I had met my boyfriend Joseph. We were dating for several months when in July he had taken his father's motorcycle out for a ride, and some time went by and his father went to look for him because he didn't come back. Upon his father coming back, flying through people's yards, I jumped in the truck with him and we found the motorcycle laying in the field. We couldn't find Joe, and I remember telling his dad to shut up, and I almost tripped over Joe laying in the field. He was gargling for air. The ambulance ended up getting there and they transported him. They ended up putting him on life support for 3 or 4 days, I believe. And this is pretty much when my addiction started to, I started drinking almost every night. I was put on antidepressants and I would black out because I was drinking on them as well. It kind of went downhill from there. After he had passed away, that's pretty much my grieving every single day. I would party with whoever I could find to party with, drink, go to bars. I was still underage. I was only 19 and there were still bars that would serve us. So I ended up meeting another group of people where we were out drinking. We would drink pretty much every night. A whole 11 months later, I started seeing this other guy. He came with me on my birthday out to my parents' house for dinner, and I didn't start drinking that night because I wasn't feeling well. We ended up going back to my place after with some cousins and some friends, and we continued to drink there. I remember only having 2 or 3 drinks maybe, and then I went to lay down to go to sleep. At 4:30 in the morning, I think, they had woke me up to bring them home, and some of them were in Oneida, and at this point, I was living in De Pere in a fourplex. I really don't remember a lot from this night, and it pretty much has affected my life since. The last thing I remember was dropping his cousin off. I woke up in the hospital finding out that we were in a really bad car accident and that my boyfriend had passed away instantly. At this point, my life changed drastically, I should say. I was 20 years old with the mindset of a baby, pretty much. I couldn't really talk, my speech was off. By the time I got tested, when I met with my brain neurologist, I was at a 4th grade level. I had to go through a lot of therapy and rehab. I ended up getting brain damage, so I have short-term memory loss, which I still deal with today. I have pins in my hip. My femur broke, snapped in half, and I have pins and plates in my foot. So I'm not athletic anymore, as you can see. That had a big impact on how my life has been since. I want to say about 6 months after the accident was when I started going out to the bars and drinking again, and I would tell my parents that I could go out because I was an adult now and I didn't have to listen to them. Alcohol affects me differently than it affects somebody else. So you having a couple drinks is like me having 6 or 7. I ended up getting pregnant with my first kid in 2006. It was pretty much, I thought I was in love. This guy was a lot older than me. And once my son was born, I moved down to Milwaukee, which was when I started to drink more and I started using cocaine heavily because it was cheaper. This was also when I first started to find out what abuse was, physical abuse. We used to fight all the time. I used to get beat up. I got pregnant with my twins shortly, maybe a year and a half later about. And after that, we were on and off, always fighting. That's probably where a lot of my money went, was to cocaine and drinking, partying down there. I'd buy like 2 or 3 8-balls a night. Eventually, me and him split our ways. He would threaten me He would use my kids as a weapon against me. He wouldn't help me, he wouldn't give me any money, he wouldn't help me with them, and at this point I was struggling. I had him come up to Green Bay one weekend to sit with the kids so that I could go to work, and he didn't want to get up for work that morning. He ended up raping me in front of my son. You know, that really set, like I was already screwed up in the head from everything that had happened prior. And he also used all that stuff against me, telling me that I killed my boyfriends, and just a lot of psychological stuff he put me through. But that took me a really long time to accept. I didn't tell anybody about it until maybe 7 months after it happened, because my mom and dad would always ask me why I decided to finally leave him. And I finally told them, and that was probably the hardest thing somebody could ever do, was just admit that something like that happened to him. That made my drinking start again. I probably relapsed 5 or 6 times. I was on and off throughout the years. You know, drunk drivings. My first 2 in 2005, and then in 2010 was when I got my 3rd drunk driving, and that was right after this situation had happened with my child's father. From this point, I was on probation, I was on house arrest, and I was doing good for like a year. Then I got released, and I was like, well, I think I can keep it under control. And I did good for a while, and then I started going out again. Landed me into, well, my parents owned a bar, so I started bartending for them, which I started drinking during my shift. And then I would pretty much go out to Green Bay, somewhere in Green Bay when I got back to town. And I ended up deciding that I couldn't work for my parents anymore because they started saying stuff to me about my drinking, and I didn't agree with them. I never thought I had a problem. So I ended up getting a different bartending job, and that probably wasn't good either because then I found drugs again. Like, there was nights that I don't even know everything that I've done. Like, I have ins and outs, blackouts, a lot of blackouts. I blacked out a lot when I drank. There's a lot of embarrassing stuff that I would hear the next day. And I would always tell everybody if I don't remember it, it didn't happen. I'm kind of thankful in a sense that I don't remember some of the stuff. I got heavy with cocaine again. Let's go 3, 4, 5 years ago maybe. This probably went on for like 4 months. And it was pretty much my paycheck covered my cocaine for the week. I ended up quitting that job when I found out I was pregnant. I met another awesome guy. And when I found out I was pregnant, I ended up leaving the job. He had a pretty good job. He didn't want me working. He wanted me working from home, take care of the kids. I stayed sober throughout that entire time. I had my daughter in October. Stuff started getting weird with him around that winter. He got really sick, so he started sleeping away from me in the basement. And we started fighting a lot more. When my daughter was 7 months, it was Mother's Day. We were supposed to go out to my parents for dinner, and he didn't come with me. When I got home, all of his stuff was gone. So that was my relapse moment. Well, that was the ignition to it. It took me a while before I started going out again. I would lock myself in the room in my house. Like, I would try to leave, but I just couldn't. I would break down crying. Like, my mental health just went. So it took me a couple months before I started going out again. Once I did, I was pretty much at the bars every night. So I started bartending at a different bar, and it was just weird because there was nights, like even on my nights off, I would still be sitting there at the bar, but I was on the other side. And there was one night I was sitting there and I was like, you know, something's gonna happen soon. Something bad's gonna happen. And that just kept replaying through my mind. And I was telling myself that I shouldn't have been there. I knew that I had a problem, and I knew that it was starting to get back to where it was before I stopped drinking the last time. So I kind of called myself out on that, and that kind of surprised me, because I still remember that. A couple weeks after I had them thoughts, it was Halloween weekend, and I actually got pulled over with my 4th DUI. So this time it was different because I became a felon. I couldn't get out of jail until I had money for sobriety bracelet. So I was in jail for 4 days before I could get out. I'm thankful that I had my mother and my father. throughout this whole process because they told me that if I got another drunk driving, they weren't going to be there. But I didn't have 4 kids at that time when they told me that. It was really a struggle realizing all my problems. I received treatment each time I got a drunk driving, and I stayed in counseling. I've worked with my neurologist the last 15 years. It got easier knowing that what my triggers were, and it was always something that when something traumatic happened or if something huge affected my life was that's what I had to focus on healing, and that's what I started to do. This last drunk driving, I was already done with my AODA treatment before I was even sentenced. So by that time, I started to fill out applications for work. I was working my first internship was under the Oneida Business Committee. At this time, I started going back to school too for my bachelor in psychology and First Nations. And, kind of learning the ropes of each division. So that was a pretty cool job. In between there, I think I just stayed in school. I didn't have another job until the following summer. I applied for another internship with Oneida Recreation. And this one kind of was another hard job. I always knew that going to school for psychology, I've always helped people my entire life. And I will continue to. Working with these kids, my first day I had a little girl telling me about her mom tying her arm off and sticking needles in. All these kids had stories and they felt comfortable talking with me and sharing that affected them or that made them sad. A large percentage of them kids didn't even live with their parents. They were being raised by aunts and uncles, grandparents. Whether their parents passed away from an overdose, they were incarcerated, or they just didn't know where they were. So this is stuff that I've seen every day. And I thought that at this time, this was going to be my path, was to help the kids in their healing processes. And then I was presented with the opportunity of a recovery coach for Oneida Nation at Behavioral Health. With that, I applied. I got it right away. I was super excited. It took me a couple days to decide if I was going to accept it or not because I thought that I was going to be helping the kids. But then I kind of switched up my thinking on it, and I told myself that if I wasn't working directly with the kids, I was going to be working for them to help get their parents back so that they can have the childhoods that they deserve and have the families. That's where I've been the past year and a half. I'm in my last semester of school. I'll be graduating this December, and I continue working as a recovery coach. I work with the substance abuse community before, during, and after. So sometimes I seek out individuals that I see are struggling with stuff. I bring them the information they need. It's not that I'm trying to tell them that they need services. I'll be like, hey, I see you. I see what you're going through, and I just want to make sure you're safe, and I give them different options. If I know that they're actively using different substances, I provide them with Narcan so that if something does happen, that they have that available. I'm in a neutral position, but I do have a lot of plans that I want to bring forward for the substance use community. There's a lot of stuff that behavioral health is trying to push forward with treatments, getting different programs opened up that will be better for them, I guess, more useful. Who has helped me get where I am today? I want to say my parents have been one of the biggest contributions towards where I am today. My children for pushing me and reminding me about stuff. Another thing is with working with the community that I choose to work with, every day it reminds me of how easy it is to be triggered. And it always reminds me where I once was, and I can't go back to that. My kids finally have the mother that they want. They're happy. Our relationships have completely changed since I've been sober. Just hit my sobriety date on Tuesday, my 3-year marker. You know, I got my spirit guides too. I can't forget them because I know that I got some people watching out for me, and I know they're always there. I have some elders in the community that I go talk to, and they help me out with advice and kind of steer me in a good direction. Deb and Kermit at Gerondale, big contributors. When I hit triggers now, it's different. Like, I don't think that I have really thought about going out and getting drunk. Like, I don't get that taste in my mouth. When I get stressed out or if I'm having a bad day, it's like I go home and lay in bed. I don't have them cravings to go out and drink. I have to find different ways to deal with stuff. Whether it's talking to a friend, you know, they always say get a sponsor, and I'm telling you, sponsors really do help. And your friend, you're like, oh, I don't want to get a sponsor, but if you think about it, you talking to your friend is like having a sponsor because you got to vent somewhere. So, you know, if your friends are good friends, they'll talk you down from whatever the situation is. I remember one night I had somebody come to my house. It was bar closed, and they wanted to talk, and they held a bag of cocaine up to my face, and I told them that wasn't allowed around me or my house, and surprisingly they put it away. And that was like a big thing to me. I was like, I can't believe I told them to put it away. Like, that was like really big to me. But I've been adamant, I can't go back. Behavioral health has been trying to move forward with some stuff for a while. We're looking at possibilities of a transitional living facility. I would like to separate the recovery coach services from the behavioral health to make those more comfortable. There's also some ideas that I've recently learned in some trainings. Needle exchanges, possibly. You know, people always forget about hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, and the transmission of all these other diseases that can happen from just the use of needles. You know, I got job resources, I got somebody who can help with resumes, higher education, NWTC with GED services, Oneida Adventures Department to put together different events for those in recovery, art nights, cultural nights. I think the hardest part of dealing with traumas was actually facing them. I actually did my first recovery story here for Gerondale. At this time, I thought that I was over everything and I accepted everything. And I was like, oh, I'm at peace, blah, blah, blah. Well, after I came here and told my story, I just felt myself going down that entire week after. And I was like, you know, if I feel like this after telling my story, something's not finished yet. I knew something was coming. And then it was like the creator just set this thing in my pocket and it was like, hey, it's time. It's showtime. So I ended up being with my children's father. My kids always asked me why we weren't together no more, and I would always tell them that they would find out when they were older. It's not something I want to tell some little kids. Well, their dad decided to start calling me names in front of my oldest son, in a text message. So he started asking me why he was saying that. My only response to that text message was, well, I guess it's time to tell the kids the truth. And that's what happened. That's what it was that I knew still had to be worked on. And once I did that, then I felt so much better after that. It's hard when their families see everything that they're going through or that they're using or how much they've changed. They're not going to come in until they're ready to. And that's one of the biggest things is I understand that. People know that I'm here. and they know that they can reach out to me. And I think that that's one of their comfortable spots with asking for help. Even if they just reach out, message me, whatever, I help them with what I can. Whether it's clothes or a ride or food, I always find a way to do something for somebody. See, that first time that I told it, I didn't even know how to tell it. But every time you tell it, it gets easier. And that's part of healing too. Now that I'm like, can you like crop my arms out and stuff in there?